From the outset, given the political mess in Victoria, I always feared that what they called a spike would turn out to be a second wave of coronavirus infection. And tonight, if you look at the active virus caseload around the country, a second wave is exactly what this is. Even the Premier was finally forced to admit as much today. Of the 863 active cases in Australia, 839 of them are in Victoria, predominantly the capital, Melbourne. With the announcement from the Premier this afternoon of Melbourne-wide Stage 3 lockdowns, 3,000 people in public housing locked up, and the New South Wales border closing at midnight tonight, it's hard to see this as anything other than a catastrophe for the Andrews government. With the hardest restrictions in the nation, longer and harder restrictions than anywhere else, Victoria's ended up with the worst outcomes of any state, with a government that's now trying to use every political trick in the book to divert attention from its failure to do the right thing by Victorians. And it's a self-inflicted mess, isn't it, that started with poor hotel quarantine protocols that's now ended up with a state, and I live here, so I can say this, it's a state that's the laughing stock of the country. Here's the sort of headlines that Victorians woke up to today. Right across the country, they were horrific. Now, do I blame anyone for wanting to shut the door in Victoria's face? Absolutely not. If I was back advising political leaders, that's exactly what I would recommend as well. Who runs this state anyway? If the rumours are true that private contractors ran quarantine because the police union felt officers were above babysitting as they saw it returning travellers, well, that says as much about the police minister for putting up with that attitude as it does the senior ranks of Victoria Police. This is not about the complacency of the people, it's about the complacency and incompetence of the people's government and its officials. Tonight, as the rest of the country opens up, Victoria heads right back to where it was in March. What happened to the businesses that were just starting to get back on their feet? They're shut down tomorrow at midnight. What happens to the JobKeeper and JobSeeker payments meant to end in a couple of months, given the state of Victoria is going backwards? For most of last week, Daniel Andrews tried to run from questions in his press conferences about hotel quarantine failures. When he couldn't shut down the questions, he announced a judicial inquiry, and he's tried to hide behind that ever since. Over the weekend, up against it, with threats of a parliamentary inquiry and more digging from journalists, the Premier announced the lockdown of 9 Housing Commission flats, and with it, 3,000 men, women and children. How much of this was actually warranted by positive cases already detected in the flats? And how much of it was about creating a shock and awe announcement designed to get us all talking about the tower blocks and not the security guards sleeping with returning passengers? I'll tell you why I ask that. Because on the weekend, there were more than 500 active corona cases across Victoria, yet on Sunday, reportedly, just 27 of these were in the locked-up tower blocks. Did that warrant the weekend's draconian action? I don't think so. Even today, there's still only 69 cases linked to these towers, so well under 10% of the statewide caseload. Yet there they are tonight, locked up. Now, call me cynical, but if this was a Liberal government that had literally locked up 3,000 welfare recipients and wasn't allowing them to leave their homes, for those that had work, leaving for paid work, not leaving for food or exercise, I reckon Julian Burnside would already be in the courts seeking an injunction. He'd call it detention without trial or worse. Just because the building is owned by the Victorian government doesn't give the Premier the right to seize it and deprive people of their liberty. After all, those residents pay rent to live there. and they have the legal right to the quiet enjoyment of their property. As I said, where's the injunction? Where's the pending class action? Where's the ABC speaking out? Where's the placards and the marches and the angry effigies of ministers? Because this incompetence that's locked up to 3,000 people tonight and locks down a state again tomorrow, and it sends 5 million in a residential city back into stage 3 restrictions, to me, it's more and more disturbing that we not only have a government that cannot get the most basic tasks right, but that so many people, particularly media outside this channel, are prepared to make excuses for it.